We don't know what happens after we die, but we like to think that it's all over once our hearts stop beating. We assume that when that moment comes, our souls move on or cease to exist. But there are times when the veil between the living and the dead seems to be at its thinnest and things get weird. From calls in the middle of the night to ringing phones left at graveside, here are 10 dark horror stories of people who received calls after the caller's death. Number 10. A grave mistake. Samantha was just your average teenager until her father died suddenly of a heart attack. As you might expect, she was devastated by his passing, especially since he'd been relatively young and had seemed pretty healthy. She missed him terribly, so it was especially strange one night when she heard his voice on the other end of the phone. It was 3 o'clock a.m., and she was fast asleep when the call came in. And sure enough, it was her dad calling her from beyond the grave. She didn't pick up. What would she have said? "Hey Dad, sorry I didn't get to say goodbye before. I'll be right down, just hang on." This story gets even stranger, though. A few days later, she got another call from her father's number, which hadn't been disconnected. When she picked up, the call was coming from someone else's phone. The person on the other end told her that they were at her father's grave, and they were getting a little bit creeped out, because the phone was ringing, and no one was around. Now, we don't know if this is some kind of elaborate prank, but we do know that if we ever receive a call from someone we know has died, we're going to hang up immediately. Number 9. The call that wouldn't stop. Writing the sentence with the number is the most important thing. Like most people, Daisy had lost someone very important to her, her grandmother. And while she was sad about her passing, she also knew that her grandmother had lived a good long life, and was probably happy to move on. However, it seemed like her grandmother wasn't quite ready to let go yet. Several months after she'd passed away, Daisy started receiving regular phone calls from her old grandmother's phone number. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but then the calls kept coming in day after day. She tried blocking the number, but the calls kept coming in. Even worse, her phone bill kept racking up charges. She was starting to get creeped out, and was wondering if this was some kind of prank. But she never actually picked up the phone. Maybe if she did, it would make it stop. But we think we'd rather just keep on blocking the calls. Maybe it's better not to disturb whatever's on the other end of the line. Number 8. From beyond the grave. Alexa was having a bad day. She was sick and tired of her boss constantly breathing down her neck, and she felt like she could just snap. So she called her husband for support and to blow off some steam. Then she heard the news that would change everything. Her husband, Michael, had passed away in a car accident. Of course, she was devastated. They were still relatively young, and their future together had been so full of promise. But she knew that he wouldn't want her to be sad. He'd want her to move on. Still, she couldn't help but wonder what he would have said about that promotion she'd been trying to get for months. She never found out. One night, when she was alone in her bed, she heard her husband's voice. On the other end of the phone, he told her how proud he was and how much he wanted her to take the job. She was ecstatic, but also scared. Had she been going crazy from grief? Was this a hallucination? Or was her husband really reaching out to her from beyond the grave? Number 7. Phone call from heaven. Robert loved his wife dearly, and he was devastated when she passed away from cancer. Sure, he knew it was coming. She'd been sick for a while, but that didn't make it any less painful. There was a part of him that wished he could hear her voice just one more time, but he never expected that wish to come true. One night, while he was watching TV, the phone rang. He almost jumped out of his skin and quickly looked at the clock. It was 2:47 in the morning. Why would anyone be calling him at this hour? He almost didn't pick up the phone, but something compelled him to do it. And then he heard his wife's voice on the other end asking him to call her back. He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up the cordless phone and dialed her number from memory. It was a disconnected number. He dialed it again and again and again, but the only response he got was a series of busy signals. Robert waited patiently for the next call from heaven. It took 18 years, but it eventually came. His wife called him again, and he answered. Hello. There was silence on the other end of the line, and then she finally said, Hi honey. Number 6. Still connected. Lisa was getting a little bit worried. Her mother had passed away recently, and she hadn't been able to sleep well since. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's lifeless form lying in the hospital bed. She missed her mom terribly, and longed for her comforting embrace. Then one night, she got a phone call. It was her mother's friend, and she asked Lisa if she'd been in touch with her lately. You see, her friend had gotten a call from Lisa's mother, and she wanted to know if Lisa had seen her, of course. Lisa told her that she hadn't seen her mother in months. But then her mother's friend gave her the time that she'd received the call. It was the exact same time that Lisa had been dreaming of her mother, and it had woken her up. Were they connected by some kind of spiritual bond? Number 5. The last call. Thomas was devastated when his daughter died unexpectedly at 16. He felt like his world had been turned upside down, and he didn't know how to deal with the pain. But he knew that he needed to be strong for his wife, Mary, since she was taking it way harder than he was. He wanted to tell her that everything was going to be okay. But really, he was struggling himself. He pushed his feelings down, and did his best to comfort her. One night, he woke up to hear the sound of his phone ringing. He picked it up, and it was his daughter. She sounded happy and cheerful, just like always. Thomas froze. How could his dead daughter be calling him at 3 o'clock a.m.? He didn't speak, but she continued talking. She told him about a dream she'd had and how excited she was for the school dance the following week. Finally, Thomas managed to stutter out, But you're dead." There was silence on the other end of the line, and then she said, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to wake you up. Love you," and then she hung up. Thomas woke up Mary and told her that he'd heard his daughter's voice, but when she picked up the phone, all she heard was a busy signal. The next morning, Thomas went to check on Mary, but she wasn't in bed, and when he looked out the window, he saw her standing at their daughter's grave with the phone in her hand. Number 4. Dead man calling. Jessica was home for Christmas, and she was looking forward to spending the holiday with her family. She was especially looking forward to seeing her brother, who she hadn't seen in months. But then her phone rang, and it was her sister-in-law telling her that their brother had died in a car accident. Jessica couldn't believe it. Her brother had been the most careful driver that she knew. He'd never even gotten a speeding ticket. Still, she knew that there was nothing she could do to bring him back. But one night, she got a call. It was late, and she was fast asleep when the phone rang. She picked it up, and it was her brother. He sounded like he was calling from his cell phone, and he told her to meet him at the usual spot. But when she got there, she saw a police car parked in front of the house. She went inside and learned that her brother's ghost had paid a visit to several of his friends and family members. They'd all received calls from him, and he told them to meet him at his favorite hangout spot, but he never showed up. Number 3. Message from Beyond. Sarah and Mary were sisters, and they were very close, so when their father died, they both grieved. It had been sudden and unexpected, and they couldn't believe he was really gone. But Mary took it way harder. She was an adult, but she still relied on their father for emotional support. So after he died, she spiraled into a deep depression. Sarah tried everything she could to cheer her up, but nothing worked. Then one day, Sarah got a phone call from their father. She could barely believe it, but she picked up the phone and talked to him. He told her that he was fine and that he was watching over her, but he also told her to take care of her sister Mary. He passed away believing that she was still stuck in her room crying all day, but Sarah knew that wasn't the case. She visited Mary and told her what their father had said. Mary perked up a bit and finally agreed to come out of her room. Maybe she wasn't over their father's death, but she knew that he was right. She needed to pull herself together. Number 2. Ringing from the grave. Writing the sentence is the most important thing. Paul was skeptical. When his friend told him about the ghost that haunted his local graveyard, he thought it was just another spooky story meant to scare teenagers away from the place. But then one night, he decided to test his luck and see if the ghost was real. He brought a phone with him and stood at the grave of a woman named Elizabeth. It was cold and windy, and Paul felt like he was being watched, but he stayed until midnight and waited for the ghost to appear. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and he heard chains dragging metal moans. He ran for his life and never looked back. Some ghosts just want to be left alone. Number 1. Final goodbye. Harry had always been a prankster. He liked to play jokes on his friends and family, but he'd never done anything too harmful. So when he died, No one was surprised that he tried to play one last prank on them. It had been a sudden heart attack, and while his family was grieving, they knew that he'd want them to be strong and carry on. Then one night, his son received a call. It was from his father's phone, and the caller ID even said his name, but when he picked up, it was his mother's voice on the other end. She told him that she received a call from Harry, and she knew it was him trying to say goodbye one last time. His siblings and other relatives had received the same call, but when his son called back the number, it was disconnected. They never found out if it really was Harry, or if it was just a cruel trick played by someone else. Would you pick up the phone if it rang in the middle of the night, and the caller ID said that it was someone who died? Let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.